Hello everyone, welcome back to Earth Turtle. Today we're starting a small detour away from Earth's geological history. Now that multicellular life has appeared at the end of the Proterozoic, I find it suiting to talk about the remains of these organisms, fossils. Before we begin, let's talk about last episode. Last episode we discussed Earth's third eon, the Proterozoic. The Proterozoic was a long eon and there were many continental shifts. During this eon, we have the first eukaryotic cells. At the end of the eon, there was the Ediacaran fauna, which is the first indication of multicellular life. So, what is a fossil? Fossils are preserved remains of ancient organisms. Usually, harder components of a body, such as bones, teeth, and shells, are preserved better. How do fossils form? Fossil formation starts off with the death of an organism. That organism is then buried by sediment. Soft tissue, such as muscles and organs, are difficult to preserve. This means that this organism that is now buried under sediment decays, leaving only harder components such as bones. Then, different forms of fossilization can occur. We'll explore these different types. After that fossilization, you have rock formation. Sediment and the remains of an organism are cemented together, and the fossil is now a rock. There are three different types of fossils. There are body fossils, chemical fossils, and trace fossils. When you ask somebody if they recognize what a fossil is, they'll most likely give you a definition of a body fossil. Body fossils are fossilized body parts of an ancient organism. These fossils are usually highlights at museums with examples such as dinosaur skeletons. Chemical fossils are degraded organic substances such as DNA or protein that were once part of an ancient organism. Trace fossils are not the actual remains of organisms, but are produced by them. Examples are footprints, burrows, and coprolites, which is the waste of ancient organisms. There are many different ways ancient remains can go through fossilization. First, we have recrystallization and replacement. In recrystallization, minerals are replaced with more stable forms that allow for improved preservation. For example, aragonite typically turns into calcite during recrystallization. Both have the chemical formula CaCO3, but calcite has a more stable form. Replacement occurs when minerals are replaced. This often occurs when remains are exposed to water. Water brings in dissolved chemicals into the remains and pushes out the original chemicals. Carbonization often occurs in plant fossils. Carbonization involves when watery components leave the remains from heat and pressure. This leaves an imprint of carbon residue that is usually black in color. Other fossilization types include impressions, molds, and casts. When a shell, for example, fills with sediment, that shell can dissolve away, leaving behind a 3D imprint of inside the shell. Or, if the shell becomes entirely covered with sediment, then it dissolves away, it can leave behind an imprint of the outside of the shell. Lastly, unaltered preservation involves remains that are mostly unchanged through time. Amber fossils involves tree sap that has covered small organisms such as insects. Mummification can occur in areas such as swamps. Also, there are known fossil specimens that have been frozen from the Ice Age, including a small mammoth. Fossils can provide useful information. They can help determine the appearance of the ancient organism. It can also help determine the behavior of an organism. For example, some fossils have been found with food in stomachs, which gives indication of what these organisms ate. Fossils also help determine locations of ancient environments. For example, a site containing marine fossils indicates that this area may have been covered by the ocean at some point. Fossil sites are found all over the world on all 7 continents. Some examples include the Ediacara Hills in Australia, where the Ediacaran fauna from last episode were found. Jurassic marine and flying reptile fossils have been found on Jurassic Coast in the United Kingdom. The cradle of mankind in South Africa has a large concentration of human-like primate fossils. And that is pretty much it for today's episode on fossils. Tomorrow we continue our detour and we'll talk about evolution and extinction. Thanks.